And welcome back to another episode of Truth Seekers Radio podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kenny Williamson. Today, we're going to talk about a few things that I've run across here. I've been kind of monitoring this for a while. I had seen several different people talking about it. And what it is these new vehicles that have come out or are coming out. I'm not exactly for sure what year they started. It's like maybe this year, maybe last year. But Ford was one of the ones that pioneered this, from what I gathered, is that, they have cameras now. They have sensors, cameras, everything that are looking at you as the driver. They started doing this lane change deal, and parking assist and that kind of stuff, and supposedly can brake for you. I've never had a vehicle new enough to have any of this stuff, and don't ever plan on it. I don't want it. I don't want a sensor trying to slam on the brakes for me, or switch lanes, or take over the steering wheel and able to actually turn the wheel. No thanks. But that's what they do in these new vehicles. And, of course, they've been pushing this for a long time, and they claim it's for safety, right? Because what you'll do is you'll see the commercial, and somebody's not paying attention, and a child runs out in front of them, and the car stops, And so, thank God, you had a car that, can self-brake. Because if not, then a child could have got harmed, right? So I read an article and saw a guy who had talked about this, had a brand new Ford pickup. This wasn't a Ford, but they're putting it in all of them, mentioning that, he got in there, something had happened. It was on a farm. Something had happened. He was riled up and needed to hurry and get somewhere, and got in, and this thing won't start. And what it did is the cameras looked at him, and they saw his eyes, and I don't know if it does your heartbeat or not, but it could tell by his eyes and his face and maybe the way he's acting that there's something the matter. And, of course, it assumes the worst. It's like, oh, well, your eyes are dilated or whatever, so you must be on drugs, or you must be impaired in some way, so we're not going to start. We're just dead as a hammer. In actuality, he needed to get somewhere for an emergency. So, yeah. So that's the kind of stuff they're putting in these new vehicles. And so I have it here where it's been mandated. Let me read it to you. So this is what I'm telling you here. Federal mandate. It's been federally mandated in. Now, it's funny that, when you listen to Trump, and, he supposedly has gotten rid of the start-stop feature that was federally mandated. So that's in all your new vehicles too. So you pull up somewhere, the thing just shuts off, and then it's got to restart. So you pull up again, it shuts off. It's got to restart. And so obviously anybody that knows anything about mechanics knows that if you crank a starter 30 times in one day, it's going to wear your starter out 30 times as fast. Okay? So normally you would start it when you headed to work, and it sits there for 8 hours, and when you come home, you start it again. So the starter operates like twice. And if you stop somewhere on the way to, let's say, so you got 4 times. But they've got these things start, stop. It's a joke. Everybody knows it's a joke. But it's a federal mandate deal, and Trump ended that. Okay, so it's like, okay, he's going to be, he's actually going to do something here that matters or that people care about on the cars. Well, he supposedly also got rid of some of the mandates on the diesel exhaust fluid, DEF, where these truck drivers are driving, and if you run out of DEF, it just shuts down. You have to have it. So he's got this mandate coming out where these new trucks, or whatever, they will continue to run until you at least get to the next stop. But guess what we do have? So we've ended some things that I think are totally ridiculous, but now here we're adding more stuff. So according to this, tucked into federal infrastructure legislation, the NHTSA, which I don't know what that stands for, I'd have to look it up, National, Transportation Safety, something like that, requires all new vehicles sold in the United States to include advanced passive impaired driving prevention technology. This means that new vehicles are legally expected to utilize this system that constantly track driver alertness and sobriety to prevent accidents. So that's what they're marketing it as, safety, more safety. You see, what they do is, and they've always done this, they always parade around some kids in front of something and say, it's for the kids. It's for the kids. Don't you know this is safe? That way you can't drive drunk. So instead of, getting rid of alcohol, that ain't ever going to happen. Instead of closing bars down, that's never going to happen. Instead of doing that, let's put a camera in your vehicle that's mandated, and if it thinks that you're not sober, then it just shuts off or won't start. And people are like, oh, well, that's, that sounds pretty good. But the problem is it's layer upon layer upon layer. And pretty soon, the vehicle's not going to start if it doesn't like you. You see what I'm saying? If you get in your vehicle and you decide you want to cuss out the government, well, the vehicle's not going to start. See, because you're crazy. You're too crazy to drive. It can tell by your eyes that you want to harm somebody, so it doesn't run. It can look into your eyes and think that, oh, well, you're on something because you're sleepy, so, we're not going to start. So your vehicle computer is going to decide if you're sober. So I guess you're automatically guilty, right? It makes that determination right then and there, so you can't argue with it. If it just don't start, it don't start, right? Yeah. So this has been going on with driver assistance stuff, and it's coming to the point where, just like in China, okay, it's going to be the same as over there. They're going to come out with a social credit score. So you've already got a credit score that determines what you can buy, right? But they're going to come out with a social credit score that says, you know what, that old Kenny over there, he's been ratting out some of the stuff we've been doing. Our vampire deals we're doing, our vampire balls that we're having, and he's kind of ratted us out. We don't like that. So we want his score to drop low. And that score is going to be checked by your vehicle as well. And so you get in your vehicle, it's like, Kenny, your credit score or your social credit score is too low for you to be driving today. Maybe you ought to cheer up. Maybe you ought to agree with what the government says a little more, and then maybe you can drive down the road. Maybe you can't. You see? So, let's see. Yeah, so the driver assistance supervision is what they called it, as vehicles equipped with advanced hands-free driving aids, such as GM's Super Cruise, Nissan's Pro Pilot, and Tesla has one called Autopilot, and Ford has one called Ford Blue, which I've seen. They rely heavily on internal infrared cameras and steering wheel sensors. These ensure that the human behind the wheel is paying attention and is ready to take control. So, you mean, let's get one thing out of the closet right now, okay? All vehicles made by man are junk. They're all hunks of junk. They're man-made, meaning they're junk. Okay? Nothing that man does lasts. All vehicles are failing from day one. They're all a piece of junk. Oh, they may be nice for a little while, but they're all a piece of junk. Something's wrong or will be wrong, guaranteed. just a matter of time. So that's what you want deciding, if you're ready to drive a vehicle. You want your Ford pickup to decide if you're paying enough attention. The software, written by who? Ford? By Tesla? SpaceX? Is that who's controlling the software, monitoring and recording everything you're doing, and deciding whether or not you're able to drive your vehicle, the vehicle that you paid for? So you go to work and have to pay for this thing. You supposedly own it. You have to pay sales tax on it, right? Because you own it. And then you have to make payments on it and interest on it and pay insurance on it. And then it decides that it doesn't want you to drive for whatever reason. Oh, yeah, but Kenny, don't you understand how safe it is? You mean until it junks out? So I'm going to tell you right now, I've had a lot of vehicles in my life, and they're all junk. All of them. It doesn't matter what the badge is on the hood or the grill, okay? And every single one that I've ever had that's 10, 15 years old, that's got a bunch of electronics in it, the electronics always junk out. I haven't had an instance yet when it hasn't. So, you take a Ford pickup or a GMC pickup that's got heated seats. Works good for the about first 5-10 years. And then all of a sudden the module goes out and the heat either won't come on or it gets too hot and won't shut off. Right? And then all of a sudden the steering wheel controls stop working that turns the radio up and down. And then the mirror that automatic defogs, it not defrogs, but automatically dims. Well, it just dims and stays dimmed. So that's what I've got on an old truck. This mirror and the outside mirror auto dim, for convenience to protect your eyes. Well, they went ahead and dimmed and stayed dim. So you can't see out of them. So majority of the electronics junk out. Of course, you'll be driving and the electric seat will just turn itself on. It may go to high, may go to low, may not work at all. Radio, off and on. Sometimes you shut the door and the radio stays on. It's supposed to go off. It may run for 15 minutes. Then all of a sudden shut off. So, and those are really pretty simple controls that aren't really controlling anything major. Can you imagine these same kind of controls shutting your vehicle off? Or they also will make your vehicle switch lanes if you're not driving right, or make it pull over. So this thing can take over your steering while you're driving. Oh yeah, that's exactly what I want. I want my Ford pickup taking over the steering while I'm driving. Sure. Not this cat. You ain't taking over my steering with some piece of cheap junk software done in China. I don't hardly think so. So anyway, so on to our next one here. And I'm going to get to a point, believe it or not, I think. And it's interesting. So safety and fatigue tracking. Many modern family vehicles now use AI. Imagine that. AI-powered facial recognition and infrared sensors to monitor your eye movement, your blink rates, and head positioning. If the car thinks that you're drowsy or distracted, it will issue video and audio warnings to wake the driver up, or it will just simply pull the car over safely. So let's run this thing by somebody here. You're driving down the road and your eye starts itching, or you've got allergies and your eyes are just watering and itching, and you're rubbing your eyes, and your eyes are blinking too much. And so your Ford F-150 says, oh, well, I'm monitoring everything you're doing, which you have no business to do, but I'm doing it. And I've noticed that you're blinking your eyes a little too much. You must be drowsy, so I'm just going to pull over. Well, it's like, I don't want to pull over here because you're pulling over in a very rough neighborhood and there's a high probability that I'll get carjacked. But the Ford doesn't seem to care about that, does it? It doesn't care what neighborhood you're in. It doesn't care if you're a single woman with a baby in the back and you pull right downtown to Crimeville, does it? And it just decides it wants to pull over. Stop, because your eyes are watering, because maybe you're sleepy. Maybe you've been crying. Maybe it's none of your business, right? Maybe the vehicle should just be a vehicle. And you can do whatever you want to do with it, and you can drive it however you see fit. And if you want to drive it with watery eyes, that's your choice. If you want to drive it after you've been crying, that's your choice. Now, if you drive it after you've been drinking and you're inebriated, well, that's still your choice. And if you get caught, well, you'll probably go to jail. But they have laws against drinking and driving. So if you're willing to break the law, then you have to face the repercussions if you get caught. But driving sleepy or driving with watery eyes or blinking too much or tilting your head too much because your neck hurts, that's not illegal. You can do that. But the vehicle may say no, right? Yeah. And the next thing is, of course, all this technology, of course, is promoted by safety advocates. Everything's about safety for the kids. Everything's for the kids. Think about the kids. Think about those poor kids. Now, we don't care if you drive your new vehicle down to the abortion clinic and have your unborn baby ripped out. We don't care about that. You can murder it if you want all day. We'll probably even give you a discount code for that. But don't you blink your eyes too much because the vehicle will shut off. Right? But it's for the children, you know. It's for the children. Yeah. So, this whole thing is to reduce crashes caused by fatigue or intoxication. But it's also sparked significant privacy concerns regarding how this real-time data is handled, analyzed, and stored by corporations and law enforcement. So, what do you think? This thing is monitoring everything you're doing in real time. Because if you blink your eyes too much, it might want to pull over. You know that computer's connected to something, right? It's not just doing all this stuff on its own. It's being uploaded somewhere behind your back. Okay? So somebody else can see it, all this data. Do you think that these car manufacturers aren't going to sell it? They're going to say, well, hey, you know, we've got the driving habits of 15 million people. Wouldn't you like to have it? You can even hear their conversations. You can hear and see everything that they're doing, just like the car can. Because we've got more cameras pointed at their face than we do anywhere else, so we can monitor everything they're doing. So that's what we have today. Okay? So now, here's the meat and potatoes of this podcast, right? Here we go. Here comes the conspiracies, right? So this is really happening. It's really happening. I have seen videos already of people saying that their vehicle won't start, and you know, they can get in the vehicle and like purposely act crazy and it won't start. So it's real. So here's the funny thing, the meat and potatoes of it all. You've got guys like me, right? And probably millions of guys like me, people like me. They're going to say, I'm not buying one. I have a Ford pickup, but it's from the late 90s. Okay? I have a couple of vehicles, and they're from the mid 2000s, like 2005. Before any of this junk, like decades, right? That's fine. They run good. I'm not in the market for a new vehicle, but especially with this junk. So, but let's say I want to keep my old vehicle up and running. For example, I have an old model, a 1999 Ford F-250. Popular body style, they're still around, but they're getting hard to find parts for. Like body parts, doors, beds, stuff start rusting off, and Ford doesn't make it anymore. Haven't made it in years. So, you can get certain parts at the parts store, but if you need an axle, if you need a front end, if you need the hood, the fenders, that kind of stuff, you've got to go to a salvage yard. So people buy parts from salvage yards all the time, and they just keep piecing these things together, like I do. I wouldn't go buy a brand new bed for the thing. You'd go buy a used bed or, such and such. Well, do you think, just maybe, that if the right people caught wind of this, they're like, wait a second, we want everybody to get a new vehicle so we can watch everything they do and say. We want to watch their eyes while they're driving. But they've got that old 99 out there. They just keep driving. How are we going to get them out of that old 99? Well, we're either going to have to pass laws that forces them to get one. And if we can't do that, we're going to have to make it somehow obsolete to where, how are they getting parts for these things? So, well, they've got salvage yards all over the United States of America packed full of these older vehicles, and you can get parts there. Like you pull them, all that, right? I know a lot of people that use that stuff. I'm like, well, here's what we need to do. We need to get rid of them, the salvage yards. All the salvage or scrap yards or whatever you want to call them, we need to get rid of them. How are we going to do that? Well, why don't we use the same thing we use every time we want to get rid of somebody? You know what that is, right? Somehow it miraculously catches on fire and burns to the ground. Sounds logical, right? Think about this. Now, if you're from the country like I am, I want you to think real hard about this, okay? If you have a piece of metal or you have a piece of kindling, like wood, you have a piece of wood in your hand, in this hand, and a piece of steel in this hand. Which one do you think is going to burn if you stick a match to it? Well, logically, obviously, the wood is going to catch on fire and burn. It's going to burn to ash. What's the metal going to do? Well, at most, it's going to get hot and burn you. You're going to have to throw it down. Right? Isn't that how it works? I always thought that's the way it worked. Until the last few years, last 10 years, when we have these forest fires everywhere, right? We got these bizarre fires in Hawaii and in California and all these other places. Forest fires, where we have everything burn opposite of what you'd think. Like you see a picture of a complete housing addition and all the cars are literally ash, but all the trees and all the wood and the grass is just fine. So in the forest fire, none of the forest burned, only the houses and the cars. Okay, they have pictures, and I saw these. These guys were reporting like from Hawaii, for example. They would literally have all these buildings. I mean, not so much as a mark on them. In a parking lot in the back that's all paved. A little bit of grass here or there, maybe, not even burned. And a car sitting in the middle of this parking lot that literally was burned to ash. It burned so hot that it melted, like the wheels, the engine, the transmission turned into liquid aluminum and ran down the sidewalk like somebody is pouring molten metal out. Now, the trees right next to it don't have a mark on them. But somehow the car melted, made out of metal. But the trees didn't burn. But the car burned. Somehow. The glass is gone, everything. It's literally ash and just melted molten metal. How that happens, I don't know. I guess that's a conspiracy, right? Because where I'm from, if you've got a pile of metal and a pile of firewood and you light a match to it, the wood will go up quick and the metal will still be there. You could build a fire on it all day long and the metal will never change. It's still going to sit there. Oh, it might be burned black. I mean, have black soot on it, but it's not melted. You have to get metal really, really, really hot to do any melting. So I have seen in a very big roaring, like a bonfire, a paper thin aluminum can melt in a little bit and kind of squish up. But that thing's got to be paper thin. If you threw a piece of aluminum there that was 1/4 of an inch thick, it would do nothing to it. It would just burn it black. It would melt. It would still be a chunk of aluminum. That's the way it works here. But I guess over there, it works different somehow. Well, guess what? It just so happens that I have found, and some reports say 12, some are a little less. But either way, here we are. We have had, within the last 6 weeks, so last couple of months, 12 supposedly scrap yards, junk yards with these older vehicles in it that are being parted out have literally burned to the ground. The vehicles, the metal scrap is burned up. Now, how on earth all this metal burns, I have no idea. But, so let's read off one here. May 29th, 2026. Okay, we just turned to June, right? June 1st, May 29th, a couple of days ago. Camden, New Jersey. A scrapyard for European cars burned to the ground. All the cars gone. May 25th, a couple of days before that, 2026. Opelika, Florida. A very large fire. Dozens of vehicles destroyed at a scrapyard. So all their scrapyard burned up. Late May 2026, Hollywood, Maryland. 100 vehicles burned up in a scrapyard. Burned to ash. They're ruined. May 5th, Kewanee, Illinois. Chernovik's Auto and Truck Salvage. Burned up. May 4th, Westport, Massachusetts. Mid-City Scrapyard. Burned up. And then another one May 3rd in California. And then I've got more. It's funny because when you Google this, or if you try to look this up, it calls it a conspiracy theory. It says, this is an article saying when you've got a whole bunch of vehicles and like that together, and once one catches on fire, it spreads quickly. The fire does, and there's a lot of flammable materials in a scrapyard, so they just all burn up. Now, some of these were literally metal recycling plants, supposedly. Have you ever been to one of those? It's a bunch of metal. So how this metal catches on fire and burns all up, I don't get it. Okay? So let's see if this will let me share the page. Hold on one second. Looks like it may do it. Let me just click it. Here we go. Okay. There's some right there. We've got the top. That's the Camden, New Jersey scrapyard fire. You can see all the cars and stuff in the deal on fire. There's another one from CBS News in Philadelphia. Literally giant piles of metal on fire. You can see the pictures, the giant plumes of smoke. It's one after another after another. Okay, here's another one here that happened in Hollywood, Maryland. You can see it. Here's another one in Massachusetts. Massachusetts, however you say it. Yeah, and this is from the news, and it says, these show the heavy smoke burning scrap piles. Okay. Burning scrap piles. So, how far would you have to jump, conspiracy-wise, to say, what if all of the scrap yards that have all the parts for these older cars that people want, because they don't want the new ones, what if all the scrap yards in the United States go up in smoke? I guess there's no more parts. So, when you like that one that was over there in New York or wherever, that's a scrap yard for, European vehicles. What is that? Porsche, Mercedes, Audi, all of them that are made here, but are like a European model. Volkswagen, probably. Just burn them up. So now if you need a part, a transmission, a new motor, a head for your motor, the front end, the rear end, the gas tank, they're all, sorry. Hey, the manufacturer quit selling those. You can't get a new one. Nobody makes a reproduction, so you have to go with the older cars that are scrapped, and they're all burned up. They've been completely burned up. So this is very reminiscent of, it has been a couple of years ago when all the meat processing facilities all burned to the ground. Remember, they don't want you to have any meat, so get rid of the meat. You don't need to be eating any meat. Cows need to be gotten rid of. So we have these billionaires coming in, like Bill Gates, and buying up all the farmland and turning it into what? I don't know. But you can't have a farm there because we don't want cows. See, we don't want cows. And so now they're claiming that cows, have to do with global warming and the ozone layer. So these same billionaires are coming out with more pharmaceuticals to give cows. So cows can't, do what they're supposed to do naturally. So let's stop all that. And by giving them a bunch of pharmaceuticals and then just get rid of them. And then if that's not good enough, we'll make sure that every meat processing plant all over the United States of America, they somehow all burn to the ground. They just randomly caught on fire, one after another, until they're all burned up. So good luck getting it. Does this seem like the same deal here? Hey, we don't want any older cars on the road, but there are these salvage yards full of older cars and parts that you can buy. So now all of the cars are burning up. Scrap yards, just leveled. Now, according to the article I read, it's been 12 in 6 weeks. Well, I'm sure there are thousands of them out there, but these are big ones. So just a matter of time, I guess, before they burn them all up. So how much of a jump do you have to make to think, hey, somebody doesn't want these old cars on the road? Parts are getting scarce or too expensive. And then if you want to buy a used part, well, you used to be able to get one down here at the salvage yard, but it burned to the ground. You mean all that scrap metal burned up? Yeah, melted. Nothing around it. In fact, you can see these pictures that I'm looking at here. There's a bunch of stuff in the middle burning, surrounded by trees. The trees aren't even burning, but the metal's burning. How is that possible? Makes you wonder. The scrap burns, but the trees don't. The metal burns and melts, but the grass don't seem to be burning. Bizarre, huh? Anyway, so I thought that would be very interesting to talk about, since here we have stuff burning up, stuff that you need, and we have stuff coming out that you don't need and don't want, but that stuff is going to force you into the stuff you don't want because you can't get the stuff you need or want. Sounds a lot like the meat processing plants, doesn't it? We don't want you to eat meat anymore. Just so happens all the processing plants keep burning down. Oh, but we've got fake meat. You should try it. You don't need a meat processing plant for that. You just need a bunch of pharmaceutical chemicals. Real healthy. You should try it. So, here we are. Now, is this coincidence? I don't know. You tell me. You tell me. I mean, we had a lot of that stuff going on back in the old Hawaii days where things that had blue roofs or anything that was painted a certain color of blue didn't seem to catch on fire. Everything around it did, but not it. So what's happening? Oh, it's just natural. It's a natural forest fire started by a guy who was smoking a cigarette. Don't you know that? It's all a big accident. Same guy in charge of that was in charge of some other deals too. But hey, that's all right. That's coincidence. Just one thing after another, all coincidence, oh boy. Don't read anything into it. Okay? Don't you dare read anything into it. Instead, I tell you what, turn on the news, go down there and pay your taxes, turn on the news, donate the remainder of your paycheck to your political person of choice, and, just do whatever you're told, and then go get your new vehicle, finance it, and pray that it lets you drive it. Especially because you have to make the payment. You've got to get to work. And so let's hope you're not in a hurry and your eyes are a little glazed over or something, or maybe you didn't get enough sleep. Maybe you've got allergies. Maybe you just don't feel good when you've got to drive yourself to the hospital. I guess you better pray that new vehicle decides it's going to let it start, right? It may not. It may decide it doesn't want you to go to the hospital. Because I heard a story the other day where a guy was talking about how he was doing something, grinding at work, something, the disc broke off the grinder and went and cut into his thumb and cut up his arm and then flew up his face and sliced his face up and cut part of his nose off and blood gushing everywhere. And he hurried and got in his vehicle and, drove right down the road to his wife, and he was about to pass out, from the blood, and he's just like, oh my God, in shock and blood falling everywhere. And she got in there, hurried, drove him to the emergency room to save his life. You wouldn't do that in a new one. The moment he got in that thing, it would see his eyes and it'd say, nope, you ain't going nowhere. Something wrong with you. You're not able to drive. And then if he was to maybe crawl home and maybe, or get a ride, and then his wife is frantic, and so she's all, oh my gosh, and in tears because her husband's about to bleed out over here. Well, then it wouldn't start for her either. It'd say, now there's something wrong. I don't like the look. I don't like that look. So we ain't running. We ain't going nowhere. Now, I don't think that's going to fly with me. So you can keep your new hunk of junk. I've got lots of old junk. I don't need your new junk, your new expensive junk. By the way, that probably never works. I can only imagine the glitches it's going to have. I mean, we've got new phones now. They never work half the time. You can't hardly get a cell phone signal anytime you want it. The better it gets is actually the worse. So, yeah, get your new vehicle connected to the internet all the time with them monitoring everything you're doing and saying, and let it monitor your facial expressions. And then when you're not able to drive down the road, I guess you'll always wonder why, won't you? Maybe you'll think about this podcast when it leaves you stranded on the side of the road because it don't like your looks. Anyway, having said all that, thanks for listening. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, remember to email me, truthseekers2012@gmail.com, truthseekersministry.org. It's flatbro.com. Reach out. Give me an email, whatever you want to do. I think that's it for today. Remember, Hey, these end times, you're going to have AI, you're going to have aliens, you're going to have the whole 9 yards. By the way, I've got to do another podcast on the aliens, aliens.gov. Come to find out it wasn't about space aliens, it's about illegal aliens. Who knew? Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, you're not guaranteed that next breath, so get saved while you still can, because we are in those end times. It's coming. AI, the whole 9 yards. There's only one way to get out. Okay, Jesus Christ. Remember that. Thanks for listening. Yeah. Until we meet again. God bless you.